Hey everyone, welcome to Wealth Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Reynolds, certified financial planner and owner of Elevation Financial. I'm on the web at elevationfinancial.com, and thanks for joining me today. As always, we're going to talk about personal finance metrics. There's a ton of personal finance metrics that you could use for measuring financial wellness, financial health, but there are three I'm going to talk about today that I think are the most impactful, the most important to focus on first. If you're not sure what to do, where to start, what to focus on, I'm going to give you three financial metrics that are great indicators of your financial wellness and would be great places to start if you're looking at improving your financial wellness or tracking metrics. So let's dig into that. The three rates that I'm going to talk about today are savings rate, liquid term, and debt rate. So if you can focus on these three things as a starting point, this is going to get you a significant amount of the way there toward financial wellness and really stabilizing your finances. So we're going to start with savings rate. So let's talk about savings rate. Savings rate is the percentage of your income that you set aside for the future. It reflects how much you're prioritizing saving over spending. It's a really good indicator of your financial discipline and readiness for future needs. And so savings rate is one of the core financial metrics I love to focus on. So how do you calculate savings rate? Your savings rate equals your total monthly savings divided by your total monthly income times 100 to get the percentage equivalent. So for example, if you save or invest $1,000 per month and your monthly gross income is $8,000, your savings rate would be 12.5%. So a healthy savings rate makes sure you're setting aside enough for retirement and other future goals. So savings rate includes things like savings into bank accounts, contributions to retirement or investment accounts, anything you're kind of putting aside as saving for the future. So one thing to keep in mind here is the metric itself won't tell you everything, because you might have a healthy savings rate, but if it's all going into a regular bank account that doesn't earn much or any interest, then you're leaving potential growth on the table. So you generally want to have most or all of your savings rate going toward investment. So again, depends on your financial situation. If you're building up an emergency fund and you're not quite there, part of your savings rate should be going into bank accounts. But let's say your emergency fund is fully funded. You're maybe putting aside a little bit of cash for maybe other big purchases. Then the bulk of your savings rate should be going toward investing into retirement accounts, possibly other investment accounts. So how do you measure what's a good savings rate? It's going to vary depending on your circumstances. That's the default answer every time. But for most people who are in the working and accumulating stage of life, these ranges, might apply. So less than 5% is going to be atypically low. So if your savings rate is under 5%, that's going to be pretty darn low. 5 to 10%, also kind of in the low range. 10 to 20% savings rate would be pretty typical. That's kind of a sweet spot. I tell my clients, hey, if you're in that 10 to 20% savings rate range, you're in kind of a healthy zone. Obviously, higher is better, but you're in a healthy zone. 20 to 30% would be a high savings rate. And if you're over a 30% savings rate, you're atypically high. So again, if you're in that typical range, that's an indicator you're saving and investing enough to be on track for your future typically. If you're in the low ranges, you want to increase that. If you're in the high ranges, you might be on a FIRE path, which is financially independent, retire early. Could be planning to retire early. So what are some improvement tips? What are some ways you can improve savings rate? One would be to automate savings, set up automatic transfers into your savings account to make sure you're consistent, or your investment accounts. Automatic transfers and automatic recurring contributions are a great way to make sure you're consistent. Reduce your expenses, redirect those funds into savings after you reduce expenses, and set goals, establish specific goals, like building an emergency fund or saving for a vacation. Things like that can motivate you. All right. Metric number 2 is liquid term. So liquid term refers to how much of a runway you have to operate on your liquid assets. So it's really important for meeting immediate financial needs and handling unexpected expenses. So how do you calculate liquid term? You want to assess the liquidity of your assets and compare that to your monthly expenses. We calculate it annually though, so multiply that by 12. So cash, checking accounts, savings accounts, all those things are highly liquid. By contrast, real estate and other investments like retirement accounts are not considered liquid. So anything that you could basically pull money out of within a day or two with no penalties, that's considered liquid. So here's the formula. Liquid term equals total liquid assets divided by total annual expenses. So for example, if your total liquid assets are $50,000 and your annual expenses total $100,000, then your liquid term would be zero point 0.5. Put another way, if you could operate for zero point 0.5 years, that's 6 months on your liquid assets if your income were interrupted. So again, we go by one would be 1 year. So zero point 0.5 would be half a year or 6 months. So having a good liquid term means you can quickly access funds for unexpected emergencies or large purchases. So what's good? How do you measure it? As expected, it's going to vary depending on your circumstances. But for most people who are in that working and accumulating stage of life, the following ranges would be good kind of benchmarks. So if it's under 0.25, that would be considered atypically low. 0.25 to 1 would be kind of on the low side as well. 1 to 5 would be pretty typical. So a liquid term of 1 year or more. Again, we want that to be kind of the healthy zone. If you're more than 5 years of liquid term, that's really high or atypically high. So that's a lot of liquidity. A good sign that maybe you want to put some of that into investments and not just cash or retirement accounts, perhaps. Again, investments can be liquid. I want to specify that. Liquidity depends on how quickly you can pull it out without penalty. All right, so improvement tips. So one, build an emergency fund. You want to shoot for 3 to 6 months worth of expenses in a liquid account as a starting point. You want to get more than that, but part of your liquid term, in theory, is your emergency fund. Balance your investments, mix of liquid and non-liquid investments to ensure accessibility. Most people actually put all of their investments into non-liquid things like IRAs, 401ks. Those are technically liquid. You could pull them out, but you get penalized, and so we don't really consider those ideal liquid investments. So mix in some liquid investments as well, brokerage accounts. So keep a portion of your savings in accounts that are easy to pull money from penalty free. All right, third metric we're going to talk about is debt rate. Debt rate is the ratio of your debt payments to your income. So it shows how much of your income goes toward paying off debts and indicates a level of financial stress due to debt. So you calculate debt rate with total monthly debt payments divided by total monthly income times 100 for our percentage equivalent. So for example, if your monthly debt payments are $2,400 and your gross monthly income is $8,000, your debt rate is 30%. So a manageable debt rate makes sure you can meet your debt obligations without really compromising your ability to save or to cover other essential expenses. So again, what's a good debt rate? How do you measure that? As expected, again, it'll vary based on your circumstances, but for most people in that working and accumulating stage, the following ranges are pretty typical. So if your debt rate is under 5%, that's atypically low. In this case, considered good. If it's in the 5 to 15%, still low. 15 to 30% is pretty typical. So if your debt rate is in that 15% to 30% range, that's kind of a reasonable zone to be in. I don't want to say healthy because I'm not crazy about debt, but that's a reasonable zone to be in. If your debt is 30 to 45%, that's really high. Over 45%, that's atypically high. That's really high. So anything over 30%, you're kind of in that zone where you're going to be stressed due to debt, financially stressed and probably emotionally stressed. So again, lower debt rate is better. The closer you are to zero, the healthier your debt rate is. So how do you improve this? So, first, prioritize high interest debt. Focus on paying off high interest debt first to reduce the overall interest payments, or use the debt snowball to accelerate debt payoff. Both are fine. I like the debt snowball personally, which is lowest balance to highest, but paying off high interest debt first can also be a great way to lower payments. Also, consider maybe consolidating, refinance, consolidate, simplify payments, create a repayment plan to systematically reduce debt, again, using debt snowball, perhaps, and avoid new debt. If your debt's already in the typical or high range, that's a signal to avoid new debt until you can lower your debt rate by paying off existing debt. So those are our three metrics: savings rate, liquid term, and debt rate. They're connected. So improving one metric often benefits the other. So for example, reducing your debt rate can free up income to increase your savings rate and enhance your liquid term. So they're all interconnected. So you want to maintain a balance between the metrics. So you want to allocate your funds strategically to make sure you're saving adequately, maintaining the right liquidity, and managing your debt effectively. So as time goes on, you want to keep track of these metrics, assess your situation using these metrics, implement these improvement tips over time, and really continuously monitor those metrics. That helps you stay proactive and you can navigate any kind of financial stuff that comes your way. So, helps you build a financial foundation that's strong. So, keep those in mind. All right, with that, you're welcome to reach out anytime. If you have questions, you can book a meeting on my website for a free consultation at elevationfinancial.com if you want to consider becoming a client, or just reach out to me on social media. I'm pretty much everywhere. So thanks for joining me today, as always. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.